Imagine you live in a small town in Pakistan. There is no hospital nearby. The nearest medical facility is hours away on roads that are barely roads. When someone in your family gets sick, really sick, you have limited options, and none of them are good. Then one day, you hear that a hospital is coming. A real hospital, funded by international investors who have specifically set aside billions of dollars to build healthcare infrastructure in communities like yours. Communities that have been overlooked. Communities that the rest of the world has decided don't matter enough to invest in. You wait. Your community waits. The hospital doesn't come. Not because the plan fell through, not because the funding dried up, not because of bureaucracy or politics or the 1,000 other reasons that development projects fail in the developing world. Because the man who was supposed to build it, the man who stood at Davos and the United Nations and in front of the Gates Foundation and promised that he was going to use their billions to transform healthcare for the world's poorest people, was spending the money on himself. His name was Arif Naqvi. He ran a private equity firm called Abraaj Group. He was celebrated as one of the most important philanthropic investors in the world, and he stole from the sick. This is the most morally devastating story we could have ever covered on this channel. Arif Naqvi was born in Karachi, Pakistan, in 1960. He was brilliant, charismatic, and possessed a gift for making powerful people feel that investing with him was not just financially smart, it was morally necessary. He studied at the London School of Economics and built an early career in finance before founding Abraaj Group in Dubai in 2002. The concept was genuinely compelling and genuinely needed. Most private equity firms focused on the developing world, the United States, Europe, the established markets where returns were predictable and infrastructure was reliable. Naqvi looked at a different map. He saw the developing world, Africa, South Asia, Latin America, the Middle East. He saw them as enormous, untapped opportunity. Growing populations, rising middle classes, infrastructure desperately needed, and almost no institutional capital flowing in. He called it impact investing, the idea that you could generate strong financial returns while simultaneously doing enormous social good, that profit and purpose didn't have to be in conflict. It was a beautiful idea, and Naqvi delivered, at least in the early years. Abraaj made genuine investments in genuine businesses across the developing world. It generated real returns. It built a real track record. By the mid-2010s, Abraaj was the largest private equity firm focused on emerging markets in the world, managing over $14 billion in assets. Naqvi was everywhere. Davos, the Clinton Global Initiative, the World Economic Forum, speaking alongside heads of states and the world's most powerful philanthropists about the moral imperative of investing in the developing world. He won awards. He was profiled in every major financial publication. And he was stealing. In 2015, Abraaj launched what would become its most celebrated and most scandalous venture, the Abraaj Healthcare Fund, a dedicated pool of capital specifically designed to build and improve healthcare infrastructure across Africa, South Asia, and other underserved regions. The investors were not ordinary hedge funds or pension managers looking for returns. They were some of the most respected institutions in the world. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the largest private charitable foundation on earth, dedicated to improving global health. The CDC Group, the UK government's development finance institution. The International Finance Corporation, an arm of the World Bank. The United Nations, through various affiliated funds. These institutions just didn't write checks. They conducted due diligence. They had teams of experts whose entire jobs was to evaluate investment managers. They had reputational skin in the game. Being associated with a fraud of this nature would be catastrophically embarrassing. They all said yes to Arif Naqvi. Together, they committed approximately $1 billion to the Abraaj Healthcare Fund. $1 billion, designated specifically for hospitals, for medical equipment, for healthcare workers, for the communities in Pakistan and Nigeria and Kenya and India that had been promised that this money was coming. Naqvi took it. Not all of it immediately. Not in one obvious transaction that auditors would catch. He took it in the way sophisticated financial fraudsters always take it. Slowly, carefully, through a web of intracompany transactions and accounting maneuvers that were designed to be almost impossible to follow. He moved money from the healthcare fund into Abraaj's general corporate accounts. He used it to plug holes in the firm's finances. He used it to fund his own lifestyle, a lifestyle that included private jets, luxury properties, and the kind of social circuit that required enormous amounts of cash to maintain. The hospitals remained unbuilt. The investors in the healthcare fund were not passive. The Gates Foundation in particular had sophisticated financial monitoring systems. In 2017, analysts noticed something troubling. The cash balances in the healthcare fund didn't match what Abraaj was reporting. Money that should have been sitting in dedicated accounts appeared to be missing. They asked questions. Naqvi had answers. Smooth, plausible, technically complex answers that required significant financial sophistication to evaluate. He blamed timing differences, accounting classifications, the complexity of managing capital across multiple jurisdictions. The Gates Foundation wasn't satisfied. Neither was the CDC. They hired outside forensic accountants to examine Abraaj's books. What the accountants found was deeply troubling. Money had been moved out of healthcare fund without proper authorization. The explanation Naqvi provided didn't hold up to the scrutiny. The accounts didn't reconcile. The investors reported their concerns to regulators. Meanwhile, inside Abraaj, a number of employees had also grown deeply uncomfortable. People who had joined the firm because they genuinely believed in the impact investing mission, who had dedicated their careers to the idea that private capital could heal some of the world's poorest communities, were watching the money disappear into accounts it was never supposed to touch. Some of them spoke to journalists. Some spoke to regulators. All of them took enormous personal and professional risks to do so. They are the unsung heroes of this story, people whose names we may never know, who risked their careers because they believed the hospitals mattered more than their jobs. In February 2018, the Wall Street Journal published an investigation revealing that investors in the Abraaj Healthcare Fund had hired forensic accountants after discovering discrepancies in the fund's account. The story detonated. Naqvi's carefully constructed reputation, built over decades of Davos speeches and philanthropic awards and UN partnerships, collapsed almost overnight. Investors across all of Abraaj's funds began to ask questions. Redemption requests flooded in. The firm that had seemed so stable, so respected, so embedded in global development establishments suddenly couldn't account for where the money was. In June 2018, Abraaj Group filed for provisional liquidation in the Cayman Islands, effectively declaring bankruptcy. $14 billion in assets under management gone. The largest private equity collapse in emerging markets history. Naqvi resigned. He attempted to negotiate. He hired lawyers. He tried to sell parts of the business to cover the gaps. In April 2019, he was arrested in London on an extradition request from the United States. He was charged with multiple counts of fraud and racketeering. He fought extradition for years from his home in the United Kingdom, a legal battle that is, at the time of this video, still ongoing. He has not been to trial. He's not been convicted. He remains in the UK fighting the charges. The hospitals remain unbuilt. I want to stay with that last line. the hospitals remain unbuilt. Because in every other story we have covered on this channel, the victims lost money. Devastating, life-altering money. Retirement savings, pension funds, life's work. But money can be rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, imperfectly, but rebuilt. The communities that Abraaj's healthcare fund were supposed to serve lost something different. They lost healthcare infrastructure that may not come for a generation, if it comes at all. They lost the hospitals that were promised, the clinics that were planned, the medical equipment that was ordered and never delivered, the healthcare workers who were going to be trained. People died who might not have died if those hospitals had been built. We will never know how many. We will never be able to point to a specific person and say with certainty that Arif Naqvi's fraud cost them their life. But the reasonable inference is devastating. The Gates Foundation, one of the most sophisticated philanthropic institutions in the world, was deceived. The UK government's development finance arm was deceived. The World Bank was deceived. If they can be deceived, anyone can be deceived. And the people who paid the ultimate price weren't the billionaire investors who lost money that they could afford to lose. They were the patients, the communities, the people who were promised that someone powerful finally cared enough to help them. They are still waiting. Every fraud has an architect, but Arif Naqvi built something uniquely despicable. He didn't just steal money. He stole the language of compassion and used it as a weapon. He took the most powerful moral argument in modern finance, that capitalism could heal the world's poorest communities, and turned it into a personal ATM. Every speech he gave at Davos about impact investing, every award he accepted for philanthropic leadership, every partnership he announced with the Gates Foundation or the United Nations, all of it was a costume. A performance designed to make powerful people trust him with money that was supposed to help the powerless. The lesson here goes beyond the usual red flags we discuss on this channel. In this, the more morally compelling the pitch, the more carefully you should scrutinize the numbers. Fraudsters have learned that ethical language disarms critical thinking. That when someone tells you your money will save lives, you feel guilty about asking hard questions about where exactly it's going. Ask anyway. The communities waiting for these hospitals asked no questions. They had no power to ask questions. They trusted that the institutions investing on their behalf would ask those questions for them. Those institutions failed them. Arif Naqvi is still in London, still fighting extradition, still free. The hospitals are still not built. Next week, we are going inside the story of Nick Leeson, the man who bankrupted Barings Bank, one of the oldest and most prestigious financial institutions in the world, from a trading desk in Singapore. And he did it alone. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you Friday.